Book 1, Chapter 57 of Resurrection. The next day Nekhludoff went to see the advocate, and spoke to him about the Menshovs case, begging him to undertake their defence. The advocate promised to look into the case, and if it turned out to be as Nekhludoff said, he would in all probability undertake the defence free of charge. Then Nekhludoff told him of the 130 men who were kept in prison owing to a mistake. On whom did it depend? Whose fault was it? The advocate was silent for a moment, evidently anxious to give a correct reply. Whose fault is it? No one's, he said decidedly. Ask the procureur. He'll say it is the governor's. Ask the governor. He'll say it is the procureur's fault. No one is at fault. I am just going to see the vice-governor. I shall tell him. Oh, that's quite useless, said the advocate with a smile. He is not a relation or friend of yours. Such a blockhead, if I may say so, and yet a crafty animal at the same time. Nekhludoff remembered what Maslenikov had said about the advocate and did not answer, but took leave and went on to Maslenikov's. He had to ask Maslenikov two things: about Maslova's removal to the prison hospital, and about the 130 passportless men innocently imprisoned. Though it was very hard to petition a man whom he did not respect, and by whose orders men were flogged, yet it was the only means of gaining his end, and he had to go through with it. As he drove up to Maslenikov's house, Nekhludoff saw a number of different carriages by the front door, and remembered that it was Maslenikov's wife's at-home day, to which he had been invited. At the moment Nekhludoff drove up, there was a carriage in front of the door, and a footman in livery, with a cockade in his hat, was helping a lady down the doorstep. She was holding up her train and showing her thin ankles, black stockings, and slippered feet. Among the carriages was a closed landau, which he knew to be the Korchagin's. The grey-haired, red-checked coachman took off his hat and bowed in a respectful yet friendly manner to Nekhludoff, as to a gentleman he knew well. Nekhludoff had not had time to inquire for Maslenikov when the latter appeared on the carpeted stairs, accompanying a very important guest, not only to the first landing, but to the bottom of the stairs. This very important visitor, a military man, was speaking in French about a lottery for the benefit of children's homes that were to be founded in the city, and expressed the opinion that this was a good occupation for the ladies. It amuses them, and the money comes. Quelle amusante, et que le bon Dieu les bénisse, Monsieur Nekhludoff. How do you do? How is it one never sees you? He greeted Nekhludoff. Allez présenter nos devoirs à madame. And the Korchagins are here, et Nadine Bakshevden. Tous les jolies femmes de la ville, said the important guest, slightly raising his uniformed shoulders as he presented them to his own richly liveried servant to have his military overcoat put on. Au revoir, mon cher. And he pressed Maslenikov's hand. Now come up. I am so glad, said Maslenikov, grasping Nekhludoff's hand. In spite of his corpulency, Maslenikov hurried quickly up the stairs. He was in particularly good spirits, owing to the attention paid him by the important personage. Every such attention gave him the same sense of delight as is felt by an affectionate dog when its master pats it, strokes it, or scratches its ears. It wags its tail, cringes, jumps about, presses its ears down, and madly rushes about in a circle. Maslenikov was ready to do the same. He did not notice the serious expression on Nekhludoff's face, paid no heed to his words, but pulled him irresistibly towards the drawing-room, so that it was impossible for Nekhludoff not to follow. Business afterwards. I shall do whatever you want, said Maslenikov, as he drew Nekhludoff through the dancing hall. Announce Prince Nekhludoff, he said to a footman, without stopping on his way. The footman started off at a trot and passed them. Vous n'avez qu'à donner, but you must see my wife. As it is, I got it for letting you go without seeing her last time." By the time they reached the drawing-room, the footman had already announced Nekhludoff, and from between the bonnets and heads that surrounded it, the smiling face of Anna Ignatievna, the vice-governor's wife, beamed on Nekhludoff. At the other end of the drawing-room several ladies were seated round the tea-table, and some military men and some civilians stood near them. The clatter of male and female voices went on unceasingly. "Enfin, you seem to have quite forgotten us. How have we offended?" With these words, intended to convey an idea of intimacy which had never existed between herself and Nekhludoff, Anna Ignatievna greeted the newcomer. "You are acquainted? Madame Tilyevsky, Monsieur Chernoff. Sit down a bit nearer. Missy, venez donc à notre table, on vous apporte votre and you," she said, having evidently forgotten his name, to an officer who was talking to Missy. "Do come here. A cup of tea, Prince." "I shall never agree with you. It's quite simple. She did not love," a woman's voice was heard saying. "But she loved tarts." "Oh, your eternal silly jokes," put in laughingly another lady resplendent in silks, golds, and jewels. "C'est excellent, these little biscuits, and so light I think I'll take another. Well, are you moving soon?" "Yes, this is our last day. That's why we have come. Yes, it must be lovely in the country. We are having a delightful spring." Missy, with her hat on, in a dark striped dress of some kind that fitted her like a skin, was looking very handsome. She blushed when she saw Nekhludoff. "And I thought you had left," she said to him. "I am on the point of leaving. Business is keeping me in town, and it is on business I have come here. Won't you come to see Mamma? She would like to see you," she said, and knowing that she was saying what was not true, and that he knew it also, she blushed still more. "I fear I shall scarcely have time," Nekhludoff said gloomily, trying to appear as if he had not noticed her blush. Missy frowned angrily, shrugged her shoulders, and turned towards an elegant officer, who grasped the empty cup she was holding, and knocking his sword across the chairs, manfully carried the cup across to another table. "You must contribute towards the home fund." "I am not refusing, but only wish to keep my bounty fresh for the lottery. There I shall let it appear in all its glory." "Well, look out for yourself," said a voice, followed by an evidently feigned laugh. Anna Ignatievna was in raptures. Her "At Home" had turned out a brilliant success. "Micky tells me you are busying yourself with prison work. I can understand you so well," she said to Nekhludoff. "Micky," she meant her fat husband, Maslenikov, "may have other defects, but you know how kind-hearted he is. All these miserable prisoners are his children. He does not regard them in any other light. Il est d'une bonté," and she stopped, finding no words to do justice to this bonté of his, and quickly turned to a shrivelled old woman, with bows of lilac ribbon all over, who came in just then. Having said as much as was absolutely necessary, and with as little meaning as conventionality required, Nekhludoff rose and went up to Maslenikov. "Can you give me a few minutes' hearing, please?" "Oh yes, what is it then?" "Let us come in here." They entered a small Japanese sitting-room, and sat down by the window. End of Book 1, Chapter 57.
Book 1, Chapter 58, of Resurrection. "Well, je suis à vous. Will you smoke? But wait a bit. We must be careful and not make a mess here," said Maslenikov, and brought an ashpan. "Well, there are two matters I wish to ask you about." "Dear me!" An expression of gloom and dejection came over Maslenikov's countenance. and every trace of the excitement, like that of the dogs whom its master has scratched behind the ears, vanished completely. The sound of voices reached them from the drawing-room. A woman's voice was heard saying, "Jamais je ne croirais," and a man's voice from the other side relating something in which the names of La Comtesse Voronzoff and Victor Apraxin kept occurring. A hum of voices, mixed with laughter, came from another side. Maslenikov tried to listen to what was going on in the drawing-room and to what Nekhludoff was saying at the same time. "I am again come about that same woman," said Nekhludoff. "Oh, yes, I know, the one innocently condemned. I would like to ask that she should be appointed to serve in the prison hospital. I have been told that this could be arranged." Maslenikov compressed his lips and meditated. "That will be scarcely possible," he said. "However, I shall see what can be done, and shall wire you an answer tomorrow. I have been told that there were many sick, and help was needed." All right, all right. I shall let you know in any case." "Please do," said Nekhludoff. The sound of a general and even a natural laugh came from the drawing-room. "That's all that Victor. He is wonderfully sharp when he is in the right vein," said Maslenikov. "The next thing I wanted to tell you," said Nekhludoff, "is that 130 persons are imprisoned only because their passports are overdue. They have been kept here for a month." And he related the circumstances of the case. "How have you come to know of this?" said Maslenikov, looking uneasy and dissatisfied. "I went to see a prisoner, and these men came and surrounded me in the corridor, and asked, 'What prisoner did you go to see?' 'A peasant, who is kept in prison, though innocent. I have put his case into the hands of a lawyer, but that is not the point. Is it possible that people who have done no wrong are imprisoned only because their passports are overdue?' 'That's the procuror's business,' Maslenikov interrupted angrily. 'There, now you see what it is you call a prompt and just form of trial. It is the business of the public prosecutor to visit the prison and find out if the prisoners are kept there lawfully. But that set plays cards. That's all they do.' "Am I to understand that you can do nothing?" Nekhludoff said despondently, remembering that the advocate had foretold that the governor would put the blame on the procureur. "Oh, yes, I can. I shall see about it at once." "So much the worse for her. C'est un souffre-douleur," came the voice of a woman, evidently indifferent to what she was saying, from the drawing-room. "So much the better. I shall take it also," a man's voice was heard to say from the other side, followed by the playful laughter of a woman, who was apparently trying to prevent the man from taking something away from her. "No, no, not on any account," the woman's voice said. "All right, then, I shall do all this," Maslenikov repeated, and put out the cigarette he held in his white, turquoise-ringed hand. "And now let us join the ladies." "Wait a moment," Nekhludoff said, stopping at the door of the drawing-room. "I was told that some men had received corporal punishment in the prison yesterday. Is this true?" Maslenikov blushed. "Oh, that's what you're after? No, mon cher, decidedly it won't do to let you in there. You want to get at everything. Come, come, Anna is calling us," he said, catching Nekhludoff by the arm, and again becoming as excited as after the attention paid him by the important person, only now his excitement was not joyful, but anxious. Nekhludoff pulled his arm away, and without taking leave of any one, and without saying a word, he passed through the drawing-room with a dejected look, went down into the hall, past the footman, who sprang towards him, and out the street door. "What is the matter with him? What have you done to him?" asked Anna, her husband. "This is à la Française," remarked someone. "À la Française, indeed! It is à la Zulu." "Oh, but he's always been like that." Someone rose, someone came in, and the clatter went on its course. The company used this episode with Nekhludoff as a convenient topic of conversation for the rest of the "at home." On the day following his visit to Maslenikov, Nekhludoff received a letter from him, written in a fine, firm hand, on thick glazed paper, with a coat of arms, and sealed with sealing-wax. Maslenikov said that he had written to the doctor concerning Maslova's removal to the hospital, and hoped Nekhludoff's wish would receive attention. The letter was signed, "Your affectionate elder comrade," and the signature ended with a large, firm, and artistic flourish. "Fool!" Nekhludoff could not refrain from saying, especially because in the word comrade he felt Maslenikov's condescension towards him. That is, while Maslenikov was filling this position, morally most dirty and shameful, he still thought himself a very important man, and wished, if not exactly to flatter Nekhludoff, at least to show that he was not too proud to call him comrade. End of Book 1, Chapter 58. Book 1, Chapter 59, of Resurrection. One of the most widespread superstitions is that every man has his own special definite qualities, that a man is kind, cruel, wise, stupid, energetic, apathetic, etc. Men are not like that. We may say of a man that he is more often kind than cruel, oftener wise than stupid, oftener energetic than apathetic, or the reverse. But it would be false to say of one man that he is kind and wise, of another that he is wicked and foolish, and yet we always classify mankind in this way, and this is untrue. Men are like rivers. The water is the same in each, and alike in all, but every river is narrow here, is more of a rapid there, here slower, there broader, now clear, now cold, now dull, now warm. It is the same with men. Every man carries in himself the germs of every human quality, and sometimes one manifests itself, sometimes another, and the man often becomes unlike himself, while still remaining the same man. In some people these changes are very rapid, and Nekhludoff was such a man. These changes in him were due to physical and to spiritual causes. At this time he experienced such a change. That feeling of triumph and joy at the renewal of life which he had experienced after the trial and after the first interview with Katusha vanished completely, and after the last interview fear and revulsion took the place of that joy. He was determined not to leave her, and not to change his decision of marrying her, if she wished it, but it seemed very hard, and made him suffer. On the day after his visit to Maslenikov, he again went to the prison to see her. The inspector allowed him to speak to her, only not in the advocate's room, nor in the office, but in the women's visiting room. In spite of his kindness, the inspector was more reserved with Nekhludoff than hitherto. An order for greater caution had apparently been sent, as a result of his conversation with Maslenikov. "You may see her," the inspector said, "but please remember what I said as regards money. And as to her removal to the hospital that His Excellency wrote to me about, it can be done. The doctor would agree. Only she herself does not wish it. She says, 'Much need have I to carry out the slops for the scurvy beggars.' You don't know what these people are, Prince," he added. Nekhludoff did not reply, but asked to have the interview. The inspector called a jailer, whom Nekhludoff followed into the women's visiting room, where there was no one but Maslova waiting. She came from behind the grating, quiet and timid, close up to him, and said, without looking at him, "Forgive me, Dmitri Ivanovitch. I spoke hastily the day before yesterday." "It's not for me to forgive you," Nekhludoff began. "But all the same, you must leave me," she interrupted, and in the terribly squinting eyes with which she looked at him, Nekhludoff read the former strained, angry expression. "Why should I leave you?" "So? But why so?" She again looked up, as it seemed to him, with the same angry look. "Well, then, thus it is," she said. You must leave me. It is true what I am saying. I cannot. You must give it up altogether." Her lips trembled, and she was silent for a moment. "It is true. I'd rather hang myself." Nekhludoff felt in this refusal there was hatred and unforgiving resentment. But there was also something besides, something good. This confirmation of the refusal in cold blood at once quenched all the doubts in Nekhludoff's bosom, and brought back the serious, triumphant emotion he had felt in relation to Katusha. "Katusha, what I have said I will again repeat," he uttered, very seriously. "I ask you to marry me. If you do not wish it, and for as long as you do not wish it, I shall only continue to follow you, and shall go where you are taken. That is your business. I shall not say anything more," she answered, and her lips began to tremble again. He, too, was silent, feeling unable to speak. "I shall now go to the country, and then to Petersburg," he said, when he was quieter again. "I shall do my utmost to get our case, reconsidered, and by the help of God the sentence may be revoked, and if it is not revoked, never mind. I have deserved it, if not in this case, in other ways," she said, and he saw how difficult it was for her to keep down her tears. "Well, have you seen Menshoff?" she suddenly asked, to hide her emotion. "It's true they are innocent, isn't it?" "Yes, I think so." "Such a splendid old woman," she said. There was another pause. "Well, and as to the hospital," she suddenly said, and looking at him with her squinting eyes, "if you like, I will go, and I shall not drink any spirits either." Nekhludoff looked into her eyes. They were smiling. Yes, she is quite a different being," Nekhludoff thought. After all his former doubts, he now felt something he had never before experienced, the certainty that love is invincible. When Maslova returned to her noisome cell after this interview, she took off her cloak and sat down in her place on the shelf bedstead with her hands folded on her lap. In the cell were only the consumptive woman, the Vladimir woman with her baby, Menshoff's old mother, and the watchman's wife. The deacon's daughter had the day before been declared mentally diseased and removed to the hospital. The rest of the women were away, washing clothes. The old woman was asleep, the cell door stood open, and the watchman's children were in the corridor outside. The Vladimir woman, with her baby in her arms, and the watchman's wife, with the stocking she was knitting with deft fingers, came up to Maslova. "Well, have you had a chat?" they asked. Maslova sat silent on the high bedstead, swinging her legs, which did not reach to the floor. "What's the good of snivelling?" said the watchman's wife. "The chief thing is not to get down into the dumps, Katusha? Now then," and she went on, quickly moving her fingers. Maslova did not answer. "And our women have all gone to wash," said the Vladimir woman. "I heard them say much has been given in alms today. Quite a lot has been brought." "Finashka," called out the watchman's wife, "where's that little imp gone to?" She took a knitting needle, stuck it through both the ball and the stocking, and went out into the corridor. At this moment the sound of women's voices was heard from the corridor, and the inmates of the cell entered with their prison shoes, but no stockings on their feet. Each was carrying a roll, some even two. Theodosia came at once up to Maslova. "What's the matter? Is anything wrong?" Theodosia asked, looking lovingly at Maslova with her clear blue eyes. "This is for our tea." And she put the rolls on a shelf. "Why, surely he has not changed his mind about marrying?" asked Korableva. "No, he has not. But I don't wish to," said Maslova, "and so I told him." "More fool you," muttered Korableva in her deep tones. "If one's not to live together, what's the use of marrying?" said Theodosia. "There's your husband. He's going with you," said the watchman's wife. "Well, of course, we're married," said Theodosia. "But why should he go through the ceremony if he is not to live with her?" "Why, indeed? Don't be a fool. You know if he marries her she'll roll in wealth," said Korableva. "He says wherever they take you I'll follow," said Maslova. "If he does, it's well. If he does not, well also. I am not going to ask him to. Now he is going to try and arrange the matter in Petersburg. He is related to all the ministers there. But, all the same, I have no need of him," she continued. "Of course not," suddenly agreed Korableva, evidently thinking about something else as she sat examining her bag. "Well, shall we have a drop?" "You have some," replied Maslova. "I won't." End of Book 1, Chapter 59. End of Book 1.